Afternoon sunlight cuts across the empty deck as Janine replays Elena's words. Marcus's cabin cruiser, leaving the dock at 2 a.m. Fear tightens into resolve. She drives straight to the Marina, fog curling around silent masts like secrets refusing burial. Harbor logs confirm it. Marcus's boat departed the night Meredith and David vanished. No emergency call. No witness to a midnight swim. Just one man, one vessel, and a timeline that doesn't add up. Standing over the restless Pacific, Janine feels truth rising like a tide. Accidents drift. Lies require navigation. Tonight, she chooses to follow the current wherever it leads. Cannery Row locates Marcus's boathouse, slips inside the unlocked side door. The space smells of marine varnish and bleach. Heavy-duty tarps and industrial-strength cleaning agents line the shelves, items Marcus later explains away as routine for deep-sea fishing. Yet the sight of them, combined with Elena's account, plants a seed of dread. Marcus arrives unexpectedly. His surprise seems genuine, his invitation to join him on a dive to the Discovery site almost disarming in its apparent sincerity. Janine agrees, partly to observe him, partly because the coordinates are the last place her sister's phone rested for 5 years. On board the Second Chance, named by David himself, Janine descends to the cabin under pretense of reviewing documents. There she discovers the bound expansion proposal dated 3 weeks before the disappearance. Marcus's vision of global offices requiring massive leverage, opposed fiercely in David's handwritten marginalia. The proposed ownership restructuring would have demoted David to minority partner in the company he co-founded. Meredith's final journal entry now reads like prophecy. She believed the pregnancy announcement would remind the partners that family comes first. Instead, it likely sealed their fate. Emerging on deck, Janine confronts Marcus indirectly. His demeanor shifts from warm nostalgia to cold calculation within seconds. He disarms the radio, produces a pistol, and confesses everything with chilling detachment. The cyanide-laced dessert wine, the bodies wrapped in those same industrial tarps, weighted and dropped 400 feet deep past Pescadero Reef, the meticulous bleach cleaning of the crime scene to stage a perfect disappearance. He kept a vial of the same poison, colorless, odorless, lethal in minutes, always prepared for problems that need permanent solutions. Janine triggers her phone's emergency SOS before he demands she surrender it. The device is thrown overboard, but the distress signal has already transmitted her GPS coordinates to authorities. Marcus intends to repeat the cyanide method, then claim Janine, overcome with grief, jumped from the boat. As he forces the vial toward her lips, the Coast Guard cutter appears on the horizon, summoned by her silent alarm. In the ensuing struggle, Janine lunges, knocking the vial away. It shatters. Marcus attempts to strangle her and throw her overboard, but Coast Guard officers fast rope onto the deck, weapons drawn. Marcus is taken into custody, still shouting justifications about sacrificed dreams and necessary ruthlessness. Janine, bruised and gasping, watches him led away in cuffs. Historical parallel. The 2004 Scott Peterson case, where a husband murdered his pregnant wife Lacey and claimed she vanished during a walk, illustrates how pregnancy can become the flashpoint for lethal control when financial or personal stakes collide. Philosophically, Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, 1785, condemns Marcus utterly. He treated Meredith and David as means to his entrepreneurial end, never as ends in themselves. The idiom, blood on the hands, responsibility for serious wrongdoing, especially murder, has never felt more literal. Modern relevance is stark. According to 2025 FBI Uniform Crime Reports, intimate partner homicides involving pregnancy announcement as a trigger rose 18% in high-net-worth tech corridors, ambition and control proving as toxic today as ever. As the Coast Guard vessel steams toward Monterey, Janine clutches Meredith's journal, realizing she has traded uncertainty for unbearable certainty. Yet in that unbearable truth lies the beginning of real mourning, and perhaps, eventually, healing. When the people we trust most become the greatest danger, how do we learn to trust our own instincts again, and what price are we willing to pay to protect the truth? At Monterey General Hospital, Janine sits on an examination table while a nurse photographs the finger-shaped bruises encircling her throat. Detective Flores stands nearby, notebook open, voice gentle yet urgent. Marcus's interrogation has already yielded a full confession. He arrived at 7:30 p.m. with expensive wine laced with cyanide as a contingency. During dessert, he poisoned 2 glasses, toasted new beginnings, and watched Meredith and David die hand in hand. He wrapped the bodies in industrial tarps, loaded them onto his boat using the dock cart, motored 2 miles offshore, weighted them with diving gear, and dropped them into 400 feet of water. He spent 3 hours bleaching every surface in the beach house, then staged the disappearance perfectly. No forced entry, no financial irregularities, no obvious motive. The pregnancy announcement, he admitted, was the tipping point. David's instant shift to family first would have killed the global expansion plan and stripped Marcus of majority control. 5 years later, on the second chance, Marcus intended to repeat the cyanide method on Janine, then claim grief drove her to suicide. The Coast Guard's timely arrival, guided by Janine's SOS, prevented the second crime. Forensics teams aboard Marcus's vessel locate microscopic blood traces in deck seams. DNA matches Meredith and David. The boat's GPS log confirms the 2:15 a.m. departure from the beach house dock and the 43-minute stop at the deepwater coordinates. A specialized recovery team retrieves 2 tarp-wrapped forms exactly where Marcus directed. Autopsy confirms cyanide poisoning. Rapid, relatively painless, lethal within minutes. Janine listens to the clinical details with a strange detachment, as though the facts belong to someone else's tragedy. When Flores asks if she wishes to see the recovered bodies, she declines. She prefers to remember Meredith laughing on the engagement party beach, David's arms around her sister, both radiant with hope. That evening, alone in her hotel room, Janine opens Meredith's journal to the final entry. By tomorrow, everything will be different. Our little family beginning just as another chapter ends. The irony is unbearable. Meredith believed her news would heal the rift. Instead, it provided the motive for murder. Janine thinks of the unborn child, 8 weeks along, never given a chance to draw breath, and weeps for all 3 lives stolen by one man's ambition. Historical resonance deepens the sorrow. The 1840 case of Marie Lafarge in France, who poisoned her husband with arsenic to escape an unhappy marriage and financial dependence, illustrates how early toxicology helped expose intimate murders once dismissed as natural death. Today, advances in forensic toxicology and digital GPS logging make such crimes far harder to conceal, yet ambition still blinds people to moral boundaries. The idiom poison chalice, something that appears desirable but ultimately brings ruin, from Shakespeare's Macbeth, captures Marcus's poisoned wine perfectly. Modern relevance hits close. In 2025, Silicon Valley saw multiple high-profile cases of tech founders facing charges after allegedly eliminating business partners or spouses who threatened expansion plans, names anonymized in public reports to protect ongoing trials. Greed, dressed in venture capital terminology, remains as lethal now as ever. Janine closes the journal, places it carefully on the nightstand, and stares at the rain-streaked window. She has her answers cold, clinical, final. Yet the ache remains. No amount of justice will return Meredith's laughter, David's embrace, or the child who never was. She understands now that closure is not the absence of pain. It is learning to carry the pain differently. What unbearable truth from your own past are you still avoiding, and how might facing it, however devastating, finally allow you to breathe more freely? Weeks later, Janine stands on Carmel Beach at sunset, the same stretch where Meredith and David once walked hand in hand planning their future. The recovered remains have been released. A joint funeral is scheduled for the following Saturday. 2 coffins, 1 small white casket for the unborn child. Innovate Tech's board has voted to dissolve the company. Assets are being liquidated to fund victim compensation trusts and scholarships in Meredith and David's names. Marcus Ashford awaits trial on 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of fetal homicide, attempted murder, and evidence tampering. Prosecutors expect a life sentence without parole. Elena testified bravely despite Harold's initial objections. Harold himself quietly resigned his caretaker position. Ashamed, he prioritized financial security over truth. Janine has decided to keep the beach house, not as a shrine to the past, but as a place of healing. She will renovate it slowly, turn the home office into a writing studio, plant a small memorial garden where the purple salvia still blooms. Tonight, she scatters 3 handfuls of rose petals, one for Meredith, one for David, one for their unborn child, into the outgoing tide. The waves accept them gently, carrying the fragile pink fragments out toward the horizon where the reef lies silent. She thinks of Socrates' final hours in 399 BCE, calmly drinking hemlock after refusing to recant his teachings, choosing integrity over life. Meredith and David died for no crime except loving each other and choosing family over unchecked ambition. Their deaths were not noble, not chosen, yet their memory now compels Janine toward her own quiet integrity, speaking truth in court, supporting other families shattered by intimate betrayal, living with eyes open to the dangers hidden in trusted relationships. The idiom, open Pandora's box, to start something that releases many unforeseen problems, from Greek myth, feels painfully apt. Meredith's pregnancy announcement opened the box of Marcus's greed. Yet Janine refuses to let that box remain open forever. She is determined to close it with justice, remembrance, and purposeful living. Modern relevance resonates deeply. In 2026, domestic violence advocacy groups report that financial and career-related control motives now appear in nearly 30% of intimate partner homicide cases in high-income brackets. Ambition, once celebrated, increasingly recognized as a potential red flag. Janine walks back up the beach as stars begin to appear above the cypress trees. She no longer feels hunted by questions. Instead, she carries them gently, like the rose petals carried by the tide. Grief remains, soft and permanent, but it no longer paralyzes. She has learned that love, fierce, searching, truth-telling love, is stronger than any poison, any lie, any ocean. What legacy of love will you leave behind, and how will you ensure that, even in darkness, truth and compassion remain the light you choose to follow? Years pass. The beach house becomes a quiet sanctuary where Janine spends weekends writing a memoir titled Messages in the Deep, part true crime account, part meditation on grief, ambition, and the courage required to question those closest to us. The book finds modest but meaningful success. Royalties fund college scholarships for children who lose parents to intimate partner violence. Marcus Ashford's trial concludes with a life sentence. Appeals fail. Innovate Tech's dissolution becomes a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley business ethics seminars. Unchecked expansion can destroy more than balance sheets. Janine never remarries, yet builds a chosen family, close friends, Meredith's former colleagues, survivors she meets through advocacy work. Every October, she returns to Carmel Beach at dawn, places 3 white roses at the waterline, and watches the tide take them out toward Pescadero Reef. She no longer dives searching for answers. Instead, she swims in the shallows, feeling the same cold Pacific that once stole her sister, now cradling her in its indifferent strength. Philosophically, she returns often to Viktor Frankl's teaching from Man's Search for Meaning, 1946. Even when everything is taken, the last human freedom is choosing one's attitude. Janine chose truth over comfort, justice over silence, remembrance over forgetting. For English learners, the narrative offers rich material, complex past perfect constructions. Had she told him about the pregnancy, perhaps he would have chosen differently. Phrasal verbs, dredge up, equals bring back painful memories, break down, equals lose emotional control, and idioms explained contextually, skeletons in the closet, hidden embarrassing secrets, the truth will out, hidden facts eventually emerge. Modern viewers connect her journey to ongoing conversations about financial abuse, coercive control, and the myth that wealth insulates against domestic violence. Janine grows older, grayer, yet calmer. She understands now that healing is not the absence of scars, it is learning to live well with them. She no longer asks why Meredith and David were taken. She asks instead how their memory can help others survive similar betrayals. On clear evenings, she stands on the deck, watching the sunset paint the Pacific gold, and whispers thanks to the sister who never stopped believing in love, even when love could not save her. The ocean answers with its eternal rhythm, waves arriving, waves retreating, carrying away pain while leaving behind the stubborn beauty of endurance. And so Janine lives on, not merely surviving, but honoring, remembering, teaching. What will you do with the truth you carry, however heavy it feels, and how will you transform it into light for someone still lost in the dark?